Okay, we're recording. I'm multitasking here today because I got to get dinner on. Um, so, okay, been doing a lot of videos. You'll notice the same top, same crazy hair in some of the videos. And this one is my journey to this point where I stand today. And a lot of people know me, you've known me. You may not know inside of me, but you know me. And I wanted to share with you, let me just put this to see if that helps. Okay. So I wanted to share with all of you how it is that I've come to be where I'm at right now, sharing Young Living, how this journey kind of has evolved. So originally I'm from the Bronx. I was actually born in Manhattan. I was born in Harlem. And I am the child of a teen mom. And both my mother and my father were teenagers when I was born. I am the second. I'm the baby. And, they did the best they could with what they knew. But as we all know, when we're young, there are certain skill sets that we're lacking. And certain inabilities to provide stability and security and so on. And so I did not necessarily have the best of childhoods. However, I did know that I was loved. It was difficult to say the least, and it had a lot of trials and tribulations. My father actually was not physically in the home while I was growing up. I was raised by another man that my mother was with for a very long time, and unfortunately, he was murdered when I was 19 years old. It was a tremendous loss. He was definitely a significant father figure for me. But I am blessed to have my biological father in my life and still able to have that connection with him. So when I was a teenager, there was another gentleman that my mother married. And, he was, needless to say, very abusive. So I grew up in an abusive household. It was verbally, physically, emotionally abusive. And by the time I was 15 years old, I no longer lived with my mother. My sister and I actually both ventured out on our own. And so we really got a crash course in trying to pretend to be grown-ups. My sister was probably a little bit better at it than I was. I was actually a very rebellious teen. I was very angry. I had a lot of deep frustrations, a very strong lack of self-worth, and deep feelings of abandonment and rejection, which would be for just about anybody that deals with those types of situations. I'm not alone in that. So I got pregnant at 17 years old. I was a senior in high school, and I had a child at 18 years old in my first year of college. And that's actually, not something I ever really highlight, but I think it's important that people kind of know that from where we start, there is a beautiful journey that can occur that can really transform your life. I would love to say that, I did it all myself. I was really strong and I made it through. I was a hot mess. I was an absolute hot mess. I was going to school full time. I also had to work full time, and I was also a single mom. And I did it really poorly, but I did it the best that I could for what I knew then. And so as we fast forward a little bit, those years and all of that very poor foundation, physically, emotionally, mentally, the lack of security, really fed a deep longing and lacking in my soul. And one of the things that I've realized is that for the longest time, the one thing that stood in my way was a lack of self-worth. I actually never really thought that I was going to be able to achieve anything more than, the average. So my dream was always to have a job where I got a paycheck every week, you know, a 40-hour-a-week job, and that I would have the ability to maybe go on vacation, you know, 2 weeks a year, and that I would have sick days and I would have personal days, and that was like, yeah. I actually left college about 22 credits shy of a bachelor's. And one of the reasons that I left was that I couldn't do it anymore. I physically, emotionally, spiritually, and financially could no longer do what I had been doing. Never once was my head above water. I was always gasping. I was bringing home $1,000 a month working full time. That was after taxes. My rent was $550. It was not easy. When my son was a baby, I actually had to get public assistance to help for food and for formula and things like that. But once I went into the workforce while I was still in school, it was a situation where ends were barely being met. They really weren't. It was a juggling. It was, you know, what am I going to pay? And what can I afford to get shut off and then try to catch up later? I actually remember when I left college, I actually went to school up in Binghamton, New York. And when I came back down to the Hudson Valley, I had gotten a job down in New Jersey, and it was a decent paying job. It seemed like a decent paying job, you know. But we know cost of living is more expensive down here. And I remember when they shut the electric off in my apartment, and it was wintertime. And I had asked my mom if Rashawn could go, my son Rashawn, who is amazing and wonderful, could go and spend the night at at her house. And I didn't really mention what it was that I had going on. I just took him. And that night, I had a pot of boiling water on the stove to throw off a little bit of heat. I slept on the sofa, and I had a little video player so I could play like a movie CD and watch that. And I remember laying on the sofa and being wrapped up in blankets because it was very cold. It was the middle of winter, and I just wept. I wept because I was tired of going around on this same roller coaster over and over again. And I just couldn't see how I would ever be able to get ahead. I couldn't see that life was ever going to shift in a direction where I had some sense of security, some sense of stability. One of the things that was probably a pivotal, well, it definitely was a pivotal moment in my life, was some severe health events that occurred. And at that time, I actually felt like, well, this is the rest of my life, and I don't know if I want to do this anymore. I actually was at that point of such deep despair that I could not see the possibility of a brighter future. But when you have somebody that you have to get up for every day, and you know that they're relying on you, and you know that despite all of your shortcomings, despite all of your limitations, despite all of the areas that you are so weak at, you are the only thing that they have known. So that would have been my son. You get up. You get up and you do what you have to do. So all of those days of no food in the cupboard, all of those days of what's going to get shut off, all of those days of how am I going to figure out how to meet the rent this month? God forbid something broke. God forbid there was some type of an added expense that I wasn't thinking of. You know, getting nails done, getting hair done, that was never even a thought in my mind. That was never even really a possibility. And I remember when, after I had the stroke, I had taken out through my job. I used to work for an insurance company, a very well-known insurance company. I was a claims rep and a customer service rep in the claims department. And I had been out of work for quite some time. And this insurance that was like $1 and change out of my paycheck every week ended up paying off really big for me because I had been out of work for a while after I experienced a stroke. And so I got this check. It came by FedEx. I remember the courier coming to the door, and he handed me the envelope. And I remember looking at the name of the insurance company on it, and there was just this moment of disbelief. Like, could it be possible? And it was a check for $50,000. And I will tell you something. That was probably one of the most humbling moments of my life. I remember taking it, tearing open the zipper thing that they have on them, pulling it out, and just dropping to my knees and sobbing. Because for the first time ever, I could take a deep breath and know that I was going to be okay. Well, here was a little thing about that. When you don't work for a year and you're getting a short term disability, you accrue a lot of debt. And I realized that that money was going really quick. One of the little things that I did for myself, which was really big, it wasn't actually for me, but it was a big thing. Not too many people can do it. A lot of people can do it, and they do it thinking that it's the norm, but it's not. I took my son to Disney World. We went to Florida, and he was 12, and it was one of the biggest moments of my life because I felt like I gave him something I never really believed that I was going to be able to give him. And so that trip was kind of the end of the funds. I paid off all my debt. I paid for my car, or actually got a used car that was reliable because the other one was always breaking down. And it was supposed to be a huge relief and freedom. But here was the thing. I still wasn't able to work full time. So there I was doing part-time work, working out of a school in the office, and that was a wonderful experience. A lot of wonderful, amazing people that were very kind and generous in their support for me. And during that time, I couldn't make my ends meet because I was only working part-time. And so I went and I moved in with my mom. I moved in with my mom. Nobody wants to move back in with their parents. I mean, I know, here I am. I don't know, I think I was like 32. I have no idea. And might have been 30. I'm not even sure. And I had to move back in. And my son and I shared a room, which was like a whole rehashing. I had done that roller coaster ride many, many times over. So let's just fast forward. About 5 years ago, I was struggling with another health issue that had to do with my thyroid. And I was basically told that it was something that was not going to go away. It was something that I would have to be on medication for the rest of my life. And being with the previous health issues, that was not really what I wanted to hear. But that was like what I needed to hear. That was what I needed to hear for me to receive a wake-up call. And it wasn't like once I realized something's got to give, I've got to change something. I've got to change the way I'm doing something. It wasn't like all of a sudden it all just got better. No, not at all. It was a journey. It was a really long, tough journey to start connecting with what was actually going on with me. And one of the things that I've realized is that Young Living, when it was presented to me, it was presented to me within the first year after I had the stroke. And it was amazing. It was really supportive. The oils really helped to ease a lot of things for me. However, that was not my priority. I just wanted to get back to the living that I was accustomed to, which was working. I actually worked 2 jobs at that time, working, and then, just trying to do simple things like go out to eat, go to the movies. That was what I strived for. It was all just like, I want this life. And I wanted to find someone who would share that with me. Relationships are a whole nother story. We won't even talk about those just yet, or not in this video. So 5 years ago, I had already met my husband, and God bless him. I mean, you want to talk about God hearing prayers and sending you the people that you need. Despite our deep love for one another, we had a lot of really big challenges in the beginning of our relationship, just due to the circumstances. But it appeared that everything that should have blown us up just brought us closer together, which is really, that's God's hand at work. And as we were going through the aches and pains of blending families, the stress really caught up. My husband works very hard, and he used to be out in the wee hours of the morning. I mean, up at 2:30, out the door, headed down to the city. You know, he did intense physical labor. And when he'd finally come home, he'd be dragging because he was exhausted. Anybody would be exhausted with that level of work. And so as we go ahead and we were trying to go ahead and maintain and sustain some type of a stable environment, especially for the kids, we found that both of us were struggling physically with energy levels, and then I was actually presenting with health issues. So when I finally realized that I needed to shift something, I started working with oils on a daily basis. And it was as if every single aspect of who I am was getting addressed. Every single aspect was starting to shift. And that was one of the things that was probably the most pronounced, that made everybody take notice and ask me, well, what is it that you're doing? And the only thing I could tell them was, you know, I'm using oils, I'm making sure I get good sleep, and I am spending time in prayer again. I was trying to connect deeply with what was going on inside of me, because it's by no mistake that these things happen. You know, many years later, I've learned that our bodies communicate with us. I've learned that everything that happens is an opportunity for us to grow and be better, if we can view it that way. And it took me a long time to view it that way, because that was not something that I grew up with. I didn't grow up with that type of an awareness being nurtured into me. I grew up with a lot of frustration, a lot of stress, a lot of anxiety, and that was my normal. And so in addition to that, my normal was feeling like money was something that I wanted, but it was always out of my reach, and that it was almost too big for me, so to speak. So when I started sharing Young Living, which was about 4 to 5 years ago, I really just started sharing because it felt like a heartfelt purpose. It felt like, you know, this is making a difference for me, and I should be sharing this with others because it may help them in whatever way it is. The knowledge and the education has come as time has gone on. It was not something that I didn't study on these things before I said to people, hey, these oils are great and you can use them this way and that way. No, I didn't do any of that. I just shared. I shared what my experience has been. And here I am now, and life has changed. Life has transformed powerfully. So I am still on this amazing journey. But see, I have no doubt of what direction my journey is going in. I know that I'm being led to even better, because every single day it's better, it's better, it's better. And here I am in a very beautiful home. I'm very blessed to say that I no longer worry about whether or not there's going to be food in the fridge, whether or not I'm going to be able to meet my bills. I no longer have to actually stress and get up in the morning and do that whole 40 to 50 to 60 hour work week just to barely make ends meet. A couple years ago, my husband had gotten some injuries, and they were pretty severe injuries, work related. And one of the things that came up out of that whole experience is how Young Living and my sharing Young Living with other people, which is simply just sharing my story and sharing how you can use them, that actually provided us the ability to feed, clothe, and house our children and ourselves and our pets. And in addition to that, actually take a couple of steps up in our security. Had that not happened, I probably would have not worked towards actually growing my Young Living as a business. And the business aspect is just being conscious of what I'm doing, and conscious of what's coming in, and conscious of honoring people, helping them to grow, helping them to share. These are all the things that I was doing and that I'm still doing. So we have had amazing blessings, being able to travel to places that I never thought we'd be able to travel. I have met amazing people. I feel like I have such a strong network of connection with so many people, because now I am privileged to bear witness to the transformation that's occurring in all of their lives as well. And that was one of the things that was an added bonus that I never thought was going to be. In addition, I never actually thought that I would feel financially secure. And I do feel that way. And I'm excited to see how it continues to grow on its own, just because people are understanding the value of natural support now. People are waking up to trying to break free from that rat race, get off that hamster wheel. And bottom line is, if you want something to change, you got to do something differently, right? So a lot of times we put this energy into things that are really not proving fruitful. And now I see that simply by caring and sharing, that's the truth of it. What has come in return is the ability for me to do more good. That's the beauty of financial abundance. You then have the ability to go ahead and do more for others who may need. And so I'm sharing this with you because there may be a lot of you that resonate with certain points of my journey. I definitely didn't go too deep in. I've had an amazing journey, but a lot of it has been filled with a lot of deep sorrow and struggle. But that's just a part of my story. That's part of my past. It's not who I am, but it has helped to move me to where I am now. It has helped to reveal the truth within me, which is really, really powerful. So I want to thank you all. And I hope that for each one of you that may be hearing something that is speaking to you, I would like you to know that it is my intention that through my sharing of what has been blessed to me, something may be reaching into you to give you hope, give you the insight and the awareness that, if you're feeling stuck right now, that's not where you have to stay. The door is always there. You just have to walk through it. Opportunities are always there. You just have to be ready to receive them. All right. God bless everyone. Take care.